All right, so here we are at Gawler's funeral home here in Northwest Washington to do a pre-planning class to learn more about what it is that you need to have in line and organized for your final arrangements. So let's check it out.
Katrina Smith, coordinator as well as our pre-planning advisor here at Joseph Gawler's, and I'm joined with...
My name is Kevin Barnett, and I am the Executive Director of Client Relations and the Funeral Director here at Joseph Gawler's. So welcome everyone.
People call into funeral homes all the time, surprisingly, to say, I want to pre-plan my funeral, or I want to get an idea of how much this costs, or, I need to know a little bit more about the process, and they call. So that's the first step. You just make the call. Then we can set up an appointment, we can sit down and talk about anything that you want to talk about, right? And that's why I gave you all the personal planning guides. I've been a licensed funeral director for 24 years now. Gosh, it hurts to say that. But for the majority of my career, I was serving families, as Kevin does, who had experienced the death, and then you have to call the funeral home and get the remains moved and start planning a funeral, turn this thing around in a week or so. So for the past 3 years, I kind of transitioned over to this pre-planning role because there were so many times, countless, that I'm sitting down with a family and they're burying their mom or their dad or their sibling, and they're like, I don't even know what they want, I don't know if she or he prefer to be buried or if they prefer to be cremated, and the stress of that alone, feeling like you're not doing what they wanted or you're not honoring them the way that they would have preferred, is compounding your grief. So I said, let me get ahead of this thing, and I was invited to join this team, and immediately I noticed the difference in what I was doing. I love helping people, and it's what I'm doing every day. I'm just doing it in a different, from a different vantage point, if you will. And I can say for certain that in the 18 plus years that I was helping people plan at the time of their passing, that no one ever came to me whose parent or someone had pre-planned and said, oh God, I wish mom didn't do that. I was so looking forward to pick out mom's casket, The ones that are beneficiaries of someone that pre-planned are the most grateful because they can really just sit back and grieve and celebrate their loved one and honor their life without having the stresses of making those tough decisions or having to pull out their wallet and pay for it. And that's what pre-planning is all about. It's taking the stress and the burden off of your family and also being able to tell your own story. Who better to tell your story than you, If you want karaoke at your funeral, it's great to have it in your head, but if you don't write it down, who's going to know? So these personal planning guides, I've provided each of you with one, and I would love for you to just take some time, sit down one evening over coffee or wine, and put this information in here so that at the very least, your loved ones know what you want and what you prefer. How embarrassing is it to sit down in front of a stranger, right? And we have to kind of probe a little bit and ask some questions and not know things like how much schooling and education your loved one had. Did they finish high school? I don't know. Did they go to college? I don't know. What's your grandmother's maiden name? I have no idea. How many people get stumped with that question,
The most common one.
For the death certificates.
Death certificates, yeah.
Your grandmother's maiden name?
Well, if it were your child, they are getting your mother's maiden name. So it would be your child's grandmother. So that's why I said it that way. So I would need to know my mother's maiden name. So my grandmother's maiden name. Exactly. See, keep a little turn there. In this personal planning guide, there is space for you to put down all this information. Saves the embarrassment, again, saves the burden, saves the grief. All those questions that we're going to have to ask, if they don't know, they will know if you give it to them. They'll know the type of flowers that you prefer. They will know the name of your high school buddy that you don't want to give remarks because they're going to tell stories about you that are supposed to follow them to the grave, okay? They'll know the phone number of that friend that you've got across the country that you've known for years, but you don't necessarily talk to your family about that person, but they'll know who to call. They'll know the passwords to your online profiles or things like that. That business that they're going to have to handle for you when you're not around, right? Those things that we don't want to talk about on a regular basis. Put them here, put it away, tell them where to find it, so that it's less of a hassle for them, right? Like I said, who better to tell your story than you?
I did a lot of planning with an attorney, and about all the, I was very concerned about the millions of passwords, you know, like, and he said, overall, don't worry, because once your family has your official death certificate, when you show that to a bank or financial institution, they will hand over the passwords with that. So, you know, because I was like, how am I ever going to remember to keep updating all those things? So ultimately, your death certificate will override that for family if they need to contact.
Yes, death certificates take the place of someone's signature, right? So if you have a car or a house after you pass away and they're trying to sell said car or house, that death certificate is going to take the place of me signing, you know, over the deed or over the title of a car. So it's very important to have those on.
I've already purchased a plot, not in this area. So, but the one little gap that they weren't even really clear on, because no one knows exactly where they will be at the moment, but if it is, who handles the transport?
So you do need a funeral home to do that.
Yeah, okay.
It's the funeral home that gets involved when someone immediately passes away. That's another
Okay.
misconception,
Yeah.
right, Darren? Folks call the cemetery, they
Yeah.
get their plot and everything, and they're like, oh, everything's all taken care of. But then Darren will have to ask them the question, well, who's gonna bring your body here?
Right.
The funeral home. When there is a deceased person, whether they're at a hospital, whether they're at home, a nursing facility, it is the funeral home that's initially going to pick up.
When I had to have a grave opened in Indiana, I had to have a funeral director there for the opening of the grave. Though I was able to carry the cremains from DC to Indiana, I had to do that.
That differs from state to state. I could hand over, or Kevin can hand over cremated remains to a family and they can transport them to Park Lawn and they don't need a licensed funeral director to stand there for the placement. Now, if it's a body in a casket, you do. But for ashes, it does differ from state to state when it comes to that.
If you are thinking about doing even body donation or something along those lines, so if you're working with an institution like NIH, it's still important to have a funeral home as a backup because not everyone is accepted at time of death if they've planned to move forward with body donation. Say, for instance, if you have for the last 10 years worked with NIH to have your body accepted by them, but you may pass away from COVID or something like sepsis, then you are automatically rejected and a funeral home has to step in. So it's good to always have a plan B related to things even in regard to body donation. And with regard to the question about green burials, there are a lot of green burial options within the funeral home selections as well, related to caskets that are degrade over time that we can easily access. So
I'm glad that you mentioned the body donation thing. I actually worked with a young lady some years back, through here, and she had already made arrangements to do an anatomical donation at the time of her passing. But she had the foresight to know that if she passed away from something that disqualified her from that program, she would need a funeral home involved. So she did come in and do a pre-arrangement for her cremation with the reassurance of knowing that if our services were not needed at the time of her passing, that her money would be returned to her family or to her estate, okay? So when you pre-plan, just like the transferability, if you move away, you can transfer it. If for some reason you don't tell your family, hey, I pre-planned with Gawler's, and you end up at some other funeral home for your services, all they have to do is present us with a death certificate to prove that we did not provide the services that you paid for, and your money gets returned to your estate, okay? So funeral homes cannot keep money for services that we did not perform, right? Even in the sense of, say you pass away in a plane crash, and there's no body for us to perform services for. Again, any services that we're not performing, those funds would be returned to your family or your estate.
So is this an insurance policy kind of thing, or
Depending
is...
on the way it's written, yes. There are
Okay.
a couple options in the different ways that we can do your pre-planning. The insurance is honestly the best way to go because, just like the cemetery, you have the option to pay over time, and while you're paying, you're insured, right? So say you're on a 5 or 10 year payment plan. God forbid, none of us know when we're gonna be going away from here, and you pass away before all your payments are made. In most situations, that plan would be paid paid off at your passing, and your family, again, not burdened with having to come in and open up their checkbook to pay the rest.
So did Gawlers handle AIDS victims back in the day? Because that was a big issue for...
And Joseph Gawlers has supported the LGBTQ community actively since the 1950s. During the Lavender Scare, when individuals were losing their job and resorting to self-harm and suicide, and they were rejected by other funeral homes, Joseph Gawlers supported those families. We have record of that. In fact, this year we were recognized by a local nonprofit for our decades of support to the LGBTQ community. During the AIDS epidemic, we were the only funeral home in the early days that supported the queer community. Only funeral home. In the very early days of the epidemic, we were the only funeral home that supported the LGBTQ community. And so Gawlers is, and I'm very proud of that.
Dignity Memorial, our funeral homes were some of the only funeral homes that were not turning people away that had passed away from COVID-19. We were still offering full service funerals where people could come in and see their loved one and mourn their loved one, whereas a lot of family homes were not doing the same.
Does Gawlers handle Jewish funerals?
We do. We serve all faiths. So we are trained to serve all faiths. So whether you identify as Jewish, Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, or anything in between, we've served families of all different faiths and traditions.
You bring in a rabbi?
We do. So we can bring in a rabbi, an imam, a monk, really anything to support a family's needs. Yeah, absolutely. In a space like the Grand Hall, using a Buddhist service as the example, we can move the podium here out of the way, create the altar that the Buddhist tradition requires. So yes, we can definitely do that. The only thing that we cannot perform in-house are services where it has to be performed on consecrated grounds. So for instance, a formal Catholic Mass cannot be held at Gawlers because we're not consecrated. But we can have a priest come in, do prayer services, things like that. Yes, we serve all faiths, and historically have always served all faiths.
What about if I wanted to buy a casket from Costco or Amazon?
Absolutely. That's a federally...
Will you take it?
Yes, that is
We
a...
won't store it, but we'll take it. Don't buy it now, because we're not going to put it in the garage for you.
But that is a federally protected right.
Absolutely.
The one thing that I will say with regard to that, yes, it's your federally protected right, but just make sure that in the process of ordering it, just make sure that they're able to accommodate like the shipping needs within the time frame for your service. So if you identify as within the Jewish faith and you're trying to move forward with services, especially if you're Orthodox, within the 24 to 48 hour window, candidly just make sure that that Costco casket is A, an all wood construction, B, it can be delivered within that 24 to 48 hour window. So there's a buyer beware conversation with that. I will say in the experiences that I've had, yes, families have ordered caskets through entities like Costco, Amazon, etc. Sometimes they've arrived and they've had damage in shipping or things like that, and sometimes they're beautiful. It's just
hit or miss.
It is a hit or miss situation.
We're also joined by Darren Clark today. He is representing Park Lawn Memorial Park Cemetery, so he'll be able to talk with you all about pre-planning on the cemetery side of things as well.
My name is Darren Clark. I represent Park Lawn Cemetery, which is one of the premier cemeteries in the area. I'm here to talk to you about your final resting place. There are many options when it comes to taking care of your remains, but for the most part, you definitely want to try and take care of things yourself. If you take care of them yourself, then you don't really have to worry about leaving that cost and pass that cost on to your children. Park Lawn Cemetery was established in the early 1950s. All right, the property was owned by the Wilkins Coffee Company, Wilkins Coffee and the Wilkins family. The mansion that stands at Park Lawn Cemetery is the mansion that they lived in. It currently sits on about 145 acres of cemetery property. So there are a lot of options when it comes to laying the remains to rest. Of course, we have everything from traditional burials to anything you can possibly think of. And we've got private estates. We've got some property that you could actually build to suit. If you can imagine it, then we can build it. And most of the things I'll point out to you is in the back of this brochure, and it's called the Dignity Difference. The Dignity Difference is a brand that we stand by at our park here, and we pride ourselves on offering things like the Compassion Hotline. There's a hotline that you can call if your loved ones are having trouble. And even today, if you have loved ones that you lay to rest at a Dignity property, the Compassion Hotline is still available for you. You have up to 13 months of service where you can call and you can actually speak with someone in reference to your loss. All right, we have 100% guarantee, which is another Dignity Difference. We guarantee our services 100%. If you're not satisfied, then we'll work to make it correct. If you pre-plan here at Park Lawn, with us at Park Lawn, but for instance, you decide your family, your kids move to another area, and you decide you want to move with your kids, you can actually move everything that you've taken care of here with you to wherever it is you go. As long as you're more than 75 miles away from your home property, you can move everything that you've pre-planned here with you to whatever property you go to. We have properties throughout Canada, United States, and Puerto Rico. All right, so there's no place that we're not touching that if you have an issue and you want to move your property.
Are you saying if I bought a plot then that I ended up moving, I could then transfer, I could get a plot wherever I moved?
Absolutely.
With an SCI place or?
Absolutely. You can work with SCI, but there's also an outside affiliate company called the ICCFA. ICCFA, they kind of a broader company that works with every other cemetery company.
So whatever I've paid you, I have to pay this, would that be the same or less or more?
You
pay
move,
again?
well, if you move with a Dignity property, you move item for item. So whatever you purchase here, if you purchase and I'm not sure if everyone is familiar with the items that you need for burial, but there is the plot itself, okay? Then there's the outer burial container, which is commonly referred to as a vault. And then the cost to open the site, open and closing costs. There's also a marker, a memorial, you can pre-plan. So any items that you pre-plan here with us, you move those items to wherever you decide to go, nationwide.
You said the Dignity, it has to be a.
Well, we
It would be
prefer.
Any cemetery?
We prefer a Dignity property. We do prefer Dignity. However, there is an outside company called the ICCFA, and that stands for International Cemetery Cremations Funeral Home Association. So any property that belongs to that ICCFA will also work in transferring your property from here in this area to wherever you move to.
So Darren, if you want to you haven't made plans yet, where do you go first? Do we go to you or do we go to Katrina first? Like where do you start?
We work in conjunction with each other. Even though it's two separate entities, we do work closely together because of scheduling and things. So you can start with Katrina, you can start with the funeral services and pre-plan your funeral arrangements, and then come see us at the cemetery.
Okay.
Or if you want to do it the other way around, you want to start with the cemetery, you can certainly come see us and we can take you on a park tour, show you the things that we have to offer.
Do you do green burials? No vault, natural things, just no embalming, like the New York Times story if it gets there.
Some of our religious beliefs, you don't have to do embalming. However, we do require a vault. Some of our vaults are called what we call earth vaults. The earth vaults actually have holes in the bottom of them, in which we allow the earth to come through the bottom of the vault. So in those families who feel that they want compost back to the earth, then we don't require a casket, but we do require a vault. But again, our vaults have holes in the bottom of them, as such where your body will decompose and go back to the earth.
Do you have a Jewish section in your cemetery?
We do. We have a Jewish section, absolutely. Jewish section, we have a Muslim section, we have a Asian section, and then we do have quite a bit of property that are non-denominational.
One of the coolest sections at Park Lawn is they have a pet-friendly
We have a
section.
pet. We have a
So
pet
if you have
service.
a beloved pet, you can be, correct me if I'm wrong, you can be buried with your beloved pet.
We do.
So if they precede you in death, they can be placed first, and then you can be buried with
We
them.
do have a human-pet combination area in the cemetery where humans and pets can be laid to rest together, absolutely.
Please join us for the next episode, a tour of Joseph Gawler's and Sons funeral home in Northwest Washington, D.C. Until next time.